Hey, what's up? My name is Don. I'm a general surgery resident, and today I wanted to talk about a hot topic in medical school and among medical students, which is should you be doing research in medical school? And if yes, how much research should you be doing really? So being well versed in medical research is obviously important to any physician, and that's simply because there's always new evidence that comes up. There's always new research that pushes the limits of what we know about medicine, but you have to be able to distinguish papers and research articles that are crap because of their methodology and those that are well done and deserve to be actually implemented because their research methodology is robust. So in that sense, any doctor, even if they don't necessarily do research as part of their career, should at least have some level of knowledge about research methodology in medicine. But you can imagine that research has become a tool for students to distinguish themselves or kind of boost their CV in the hopes of obtaining a competitive residency. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. To give you a bit of background, Canada doesn't have real objective data to base themselves off of for residency applications in terms of comparing to the States, for example. Like the USMLE Step 1 is an objective number that residency programs use to accept candidates to interviews. Canada doesn't have the same thing. It's a lot more kind of narrative evaluations and CVs and letters of reference that are involved. And that's a separate kind of issue that can be discussed at length in terms of pros and cons. But basically, going through medical school, it was always the question of, well, how do I show that I am the most competitive applicant for this competitive specialty? And one way that has almost become synonymous with a competitive profile is the amount of research someone does. And I'm saying that's what medical students think, and that's what I used to think. But now being a resident and being involved in the applications on this side, I can see more objectively what programs and people think about medical students doing research. I remember in medical school being really influenced by hearing people talk about their research projects, and it is intimidating at first. And if you're in that position there, I encourage you to not really pay attention to what other people are doing. If you like research, absolutely try to do as much as possible and really push it forward. But if it's not really your thing, don't feel obliged to take part in research. And you'll always hear students talk about their own projects and how they've written a paper with Dr. So-and-so, or how they're going to this conference and presenting at a podium, which is all great and they're all great accomplishments. But the whole culture around medical school and how the most competitive students is the one who has the most research, I think is wrong and probably a little bit harmful. And I can tell you right now, even if I'm obviously only part of a single program's application as a resident, is that most programs will not care about the quantity of research of a certain candidate. It's true that nowadays, if everyone has research, you don't want to be the one who's kind of lacking behind and who has zero experience in research, but it's totally not necessary to have published an RCT as a first author in the biggest journal in your domain. And the reason that having some research is almost a requirement nowadays is, again, because of what I talked about earlier, is because there's always going to be new evidence and new research in your field, and you have to know how to filter that information yourself to see if it's applicable. But some residency programs will also have a minimum research requirement during the length of your training, and having some basic knowledge about how to accomplish these things does help a lot in completing these projects. So a good general rule for research is, like anything in life, most of the time, quality over quantity. So I encourage people to pick a project that they think is interesting and kind of stick with it and start with just one, see if you like it, see if you get along well with your mentors, and if you like it, take on another. Obviously, a lot of this is anecdotal and it's my personal advice, but I feel like this is generally what people will tell you concerning research in medical school. And also that might be just how Canada works in terms of research in medical school. I know that in the States, I don't know how popular it is, but I know that medical students sometimes take time off during medical school to complete a master's or a PhD. I can tell you that's exceedingly rare in Canada. All that being said, here's what I think is the real advantage of doing research. By doing research, you are gaining networking opportunities, so you get to interact with staff, residents, and a lot of people who are involved in either admission processes or just getting yourself known in a program that sometimes is quite small. Like in a surgical program, there's only so many people. So if you're able to kind of get on the good side of the residents and the staff, and they know you, and then you do a rotation with them, then they're able to provide a good evaluation of what you're like and if you're someone that they want to train. And also, if you publish and you go to a conference, that's an opportunity to network with the different people at other programs, in which case you can shake hands, just get yourself known, and potentially make a good impression. So all of that to say that medical school and research, I think, yes, it's good. Everyone does now a project, and it's probably beneficial, even if it is something extra on your time. But I would say pick a project, stick with it, make sure it's not something that is too crazy, too unmanageable. Don't focus too much on this, but sometimes you can strategically pick a supervisor who is involved with the admissions processes and who can eventually be able to recommend your candidacy to a residency program. But the more important thing is to find a supervisor who has a good mentorship relationship, for which you can learn a lot and be more productive. But definitely do not try to just pump out a million papers, because yeah, I think it can be very impressive if a student shows that they have an extremely strong research profile. But I can tell you right away that programs do not focus on that when they're picking candidates. Anyways, I hope this was interesting for those of you who had questions about doing research in medical school. If you have any more questions, feel free to message me on Instagram or leave a comment down below. And I'll see you guys in the next video.